Number 10. Operation Popeye. Imagine telling people in 1970 that the US military is controlling the weather. They'd back away slowly. Then, in 1974, the government accidentally confirmed it was completely true. During the Vietnam War, the US military couldn't bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail fast enough to stop North Vietnamese supply routes, so someone proposed making it rain more. Instead of being laughed out of the room, they got a budget. Operation Popeye aimed to extend the monsoon season over Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. The goal was to make the mud so deep that supply trucks would sink. Planes flew over clouds dropping silver iodide, a process called cloud seeding, forcing them to rain, and it worked. From 1967 to 1972, the US military secretly made it rain over Southeast Asia. The official motto was literally, "Make mud, not war." The operation was so secret, most of Congress had no idea. It only came out after a journalist's tip led to a 1974 Senate investigation. In 1977, the UN even passed a treaty banning weather modification as a weapon. The next time someone says the government is messing with the weather, you can't laugh, they already did it. Number 9. Operation Mockingbird. People say don't believe everything you read in the news. Turns out that's not just paranoia, it's government policy. In the 1970s, a Senate investigation cracked open Operation Mockingbird, a program where the CIA secretly paid journalists to write whatever the agency wanted, not fringe bloggers, reporters, and editors at America's biggest news organizations. At its peak, the CIA had over 400 journalists on payroll. They'd approach ambitious, well-connected reporters, offering money, access, and tips. In return, the journalist published CIA-approved stories and killed ones the agency didn't want seen. While you were reading the morning paper, you were sometimes reading a script written by spies. During the Cold War, the CIA used these journalists to push anti-communist narratives and build support for foreign coups. When journalist Carl Bernstein investigated in 1977, he found something even the Senate glossed over. Some of these journalists were actual CIA employees carrying press credentials as cover, filing stories directly from the newsroom. Number 8. Operation Gladio. After World War II, NATO had a plan. If the Soviets invaded Western Europe, they needed resistance fighters, hidden weapons, and secret networks already in place. For decades, people claimed NATO built secret peacetime armies across Europe, and anyone who said this was labeled a crackpot. Then, in 1990, Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti confirmed a secret NATO network called Operation Gladio had existed in Italy the whole time. Soon, the rest of Europe opened their files. There were secret stay-behind armies hidden in almost every NATO country, with buried weapons caches waiting across the countryside. But some networks didn't just wait for a Soviet invasion that never came. In Italy, investigators linked Gladio operatives to a wave of political violence in the 1970s and 80s. The theory was, these networks deliberately created chaos, bombing public spaces, and blamed it on left-wing groups to scare the public into supporting right-wing governments. The 1980 Bologna train station bombing killed 85 people, and was initially blamed on left-wing terrorists. Later investigations pointed toward far-right groups with links to Gladio. NATO acknowledges Gladio existed, but stays quiet about what those networks actually did. Number 7. The real Men in Black. The Men in Black weren't just a movie idea, they were real, and we have the documents to prove it. For decades, UFO witnesses reported strange men in dark suits showing up at their doors, delivering a clear message: keep your mouth shut. People dismissed these witnesses as crazy. Then declassified files proved the Air Force Office of Special Investigations had agents doing exactly this, pressuring witnesses and feeding them disinformation. One documented case involves electronics businessman Paul Benowitz. In the late 1970s, he intercepted strange signals near Kirtland Air Force Base, believing they were alien communications. In reality, he was picking up classified military operations. Instead of silencing him directly, AFOC agent Richard Doty fed Benowitz elaborate fake stories about underground alien bases. They flooded him with so much fake alien nonsense that nobody would take him seriously. It worked, and Benowitz eventually suffered a mental breakdown. Agent Doty later admitted to this on camera, confirming elaborate disinformation was a deliberate tactic. The government spent decades calling witnesses liars, while privately sending real agents in dark suits to their doors. Number 6. Acoustic Kitty. So the CIA looked at a cat one day and thought, yeah, that's a spy. In the 1960s, the Cold War was in full swing, and someone at the CIA launched Operation Acoustic Kitty. They surgically implanted a microphone in a cat's ear, a transmitter at the base of its skull, and ran an antenna through its tail. The cat was now a walking surveillance device. The surgery cost about $20 million, close to $200 million today. They trained this cat for years to walk towards specific targets and eavesdrop. The problem was, it's a cat. It didn't care about Soviet intelligence. It cared about food, wandering off whenever it was hungry. So they performed more brain surgery to suppress its hunger signals. The first real field test happened in Washington, D.C. Their target, 2 Soviet agents on a park bench. They released the cat. It walked directly into the street and got hit by a taxi. The program was shut down immediately. The CIA's official conclusion, Declassified in 2001, stated the project was simply not practical. Number 5. The Hughes Glomar Explorer. Imagine someone in 1974 saying the CIA built a giant ship to secretly lift a sunken Soviet submarine from 3 miles underwater. You'd walk away, but that's exactly what happened. In 1968, the Soviet submarine K-129 sank in the Pacific, carrying nuclear warheads and codebooks. The Soviets couldn't find it, but the CIA did, sitting 16,800 feet down. They devised an insane plan: build a massive ship, disguise it as a deep-sea mining vessel, and lift the sub off the ocean floor. To hide the operation, they used eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes. The cover story was that Hughes was building a ship to mine manganese nodules. Because it was Howard Hughes, nobody questioned it. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was built with a massive hidden compartment, costing over $4 billion in today's money. In 1974, they actually grabbed the submarine and pulled it up, though it broke apart during the lift and they only recovered a portion. The secret held until thieves stole documents from a Hughes office, unintentionally leaking the project. When journalists asked the CIA about it, the agency invented a new response: "We can neither confirm nor deny." It became known as the Glomar response, and government agencies still use it today. Number 4. The business plot. It's 1933. Franklin Roosevelt just became president, and retired Marine General Smedley Butler walks into Congress with a wild claim. Wealthy businessmen tried to recruit him to lead a military coup against the president. The plan was to raise a private army of 500,000 veterans, march on Washington, and force FDR to hand over power. The press called Butler a lunatic, dubbing it the plot without plotters. But Butler wasn't just some guy. He was the most decorated Marine in American history, holding 2 Medals of Honor. Congress launched an investigation, and the McCormick-Dickstein Committee concluded the plot was real. Elite industrialists connected to some of America's biggest corporations had actually discussed overthrowing the government. Yet nobody went to jail. The men named in the report were never prosecuted and lived perfectly comfortable lives. History eventually admitted Smedley Butler was right, proving that extremely powerful people really do plot against the government without ever facing consequences. Number 3. Project 1794. Those people standing outside Area 51 with tin-foil hats screaming about flying saucers were actually onto something. In 2012, the US government declassified Project 1794. It was the US Air Force literally trying to build a flying saucer, not a misidentified weather balloon, an actual disc-shaped aircraft designed to fly at supersonic speeds. They wanted it to hit Mach 4 at 100,000 feet, nearly 3 times the height of a commercial flight. Started in the 1950s, the Air Force partnered with Canadian company Overthrow Aircraft with a budget of around $3 million, closer to $35 million today. But during testing, the saucer wobbled around like a drunk pigeon. It maxed out at 3 feet off the ground. They wanted 100,000. They got 3. The project was scrapped by 1961. For decades, people claiming the government was building secret disc-shaped aircraft were laughed at. Meanwhile, the Air Force had the blueprints sitting in a filing cabinet. The next time someone tells you the government would never build a flying saucer, tell them they already tried. They just weren't very good at it. Number 2. Mount Weather. Somewhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, there's an entire city inside a mountain. Not a bunker, a city with its own streets, hospital, power plant, and government. While you pay rent, the government built a massive backup civilization underground. For decades, mentioning Mount Weather got you labeled a conspiracy theorist. Then, in 1974, a plane crashed near the mountain, and investigators were immediately forced out by unidentified men in suits. The story slowly leaked. Officially named the High Point Special Facility, it was built during the Cold War. If nuclear bombs dropped, top officials would rush underground, leaving everyone else to fend for themselves. But Mount Weather also houses a shadow government. Departments inside mirror the actual US government, complete with an unelected shadow Secretary of State and Defense, ready to take over if the real ones were vaporized. They were quietly running a backup America in a Virginia mountain. The government eventually admitted Mount Weather exists, though they don't discuss the interior. The next time someone mentions a secret underground shadow government, they're just describing a mountain in Virginia. Number 1. The Stargate Project. The US government spent 20 years and millions of dollars trying to turn psychics into weapons, and the people who said that were called crazy. It started in the 1970s. The CIA got nervous hearing the Soviets were experimenting with remote viewing, the idea that a person can close their eyes and describe a location they've never been to. The CIA's reaction wasn't, "That's ridiculous." It was, "We need to do that too." They funded a secret program and tested a New York artist named Ingo Swann. Given only latitude and longitude coordinates, Swann accurately described a classified underground Soviet military facility. The program grew into Project Stargate. Over 2 decades, they trained dozens of psychic spies to mentally travel to locations the government needed intel on. Running from 1972 to 1995, the government spent around $20 million on it. A CIA review finally concluded that while remote viewers statistically performed above chance, the data wasn't actionable. They shut it down and declassified it. Suddenly, everyone saying the government is training psychics stopped being crazy. They were just early.